Hey, algebra students, let's go ahead and walk through what looks kind of ugly slowly so you can see it's not half as bad as it looks. Okay, first problem here says evaluate negative 3x plus y for x equals negative 2 and y equals negative 1. And what a lot of newbie students do right here is panic. You know, you guys see the letters. You say, wow, letters are, I don't understand letters. They're confusing. You see the negatives and you go, I've never been able to deal with negatives. And so, yeah, we just freeze up. So I want you not to freeze up because something really cool is happening here. And that is, we know what the letters are. These letters are not as mysterious as they appear. Take a look at this. It says evaluate negative 3x plus y. Yeah, that's confusing. But then it says 4x equals negative 2. Mystery solved. I know what x is. X is negative 2. And y equals negative 1. Another mystery solved. I know what y is. Okay, once you know what a number's worth, let me say that again because you guys don't think of x and y as a number. Once we know what a variable, a letter, is worth, the mystery's solved. It's not an unknown number anymore. Then we can just replace it. And that's called substitution. So let's do it, okay? So I'm going to start with this original expression. And I'm just going to write it down, which is what I recommend that you newbie students do when you go to take your GED. And you'll have less substitution errors if you do it this way. Okay, so I'm just going to write it down exactly the way I see it. Now I'm going to do what I call my substitution step. I'm going to replace any letters I see. So I see X, I see Y, with known values. If I know what they are, I can call them by their name. It's like instead of you saying, hey, you can now say, oh, hey, Kate, once you know my name. So same thing here. If I know what X is, I don't have to call him X anymore. I can call him by his name. And I do know what X is. They told me. X is negative 2. So I'm going to call him negative 2. Now, it's super important that you see that negative 3 and that X, they were pushed together in the original expression with nothing between them. That means they're multiplying. And so I'm going to enclose this negative 2 in parentheses, okay, so that I realize that it is multiplying with this negative 3 in front of it, okay? So numbers won't change. So if I saw a negative 3 number in my original expression, I'm going to see a negative 3 number in my expression below it. Same thing with operations. If I had a plus up above, I'll have a plus down below. Okay, I want you to be looking up and down, you newbie students, looking up and down. If I had a negative 3, I have a negative 3. If I had an X, I either in the next line have an X or I have the value that I know X is. Okay, just got substituted. If I had a plus, I have a plus. So now let's look at the last thing in this expression, a Y. Okay, do I know what Y is? I sure do. They told me. They said Y is negative 1. So you don't need to call him negative 1 anymore. I mean, you guys, you don't need to call him Y anymore. You don't need to say, hey, you know his name. We'll say, oh, that's negative 1. Now you might be confused by that plus minus, looks a little weird. Your calculator won't be confused. But if it's freaking you out, that's why we'll sometimes just enclose negative numbers in parentheses to just kind of separate what's the plus and what's the negative. And now, you guys, I really, really, really want you just to type this expression into your calculator. Today is not the day to practice with negatives. It's not the main skill we're doing. And I want the same thing to happen on the GED. If you know how to do something by hand, by all means, do it. I mean, one day I would like you to know how to do all the math by hand, you guys. But if you don't, I want you not to panic. I want you to pick up your TI-30XS calculator and just type it in. And that thing is great because it can do entire expressions. Like you can just type this whole thing in exactly the way you see it, parentheses and all, you know, and it will do all that math for you, okay? So you're going to type negative. Make sure you use the negative key down at the bottom by enter. That's the one in parentheses. So negative 3. And then the calculator has a parentheses button. And then you can type the negative and the 2, close parentheses. And then to that you can add, again, negative, don't press minus, 1. And when you do that, I'm going to do it by hand to see what you would get. Negative times a negative is a positive. That's the same as -1. You should get 5. Do it in your calculator. Make sure you can get 5. If you're struggling with your calculator, go back to the Unit 0 calculator lesson. All right, tricky. Let's look at the next one. Another one that would freak students out. Now we have letters and fractions, right? If you weren't scared of letters and negatives, you're usually scared of letters and fractions. And this whole problem here is just an exercise. You see me using my calming voice. It's an exercise in not losing your snot, guys. The main skill on the GED math test is not losing your snot. Okay, here I'm a brat. I'm feeling bratty this morning. Okay, here we go. Gee. I'm going to start. It says evaluate g cubed over h minus 2. That's my expression. So I'm going to start by just writing that down. You don't have to. I mean, nobody's checking your work on the GED, but believe me, Mama Kate knows you make more errors when you don't write it down. So just write it down. It took me 2 seconds. All right. And I'm going to evaluate that for g equals 5 and h equals 7. So, mystery solved. I know what g is, and I know what h is. So I can rewrite this expression now, substituting out those letters for the known values. We know that g is 5. Now, careful. We said don't lose any operations. So there's a divide bar underneath g. There's a cube floating on g. I should still see those. But what I'm not going to see anymore is the letters. I know what h is. They told me h is 7. So where I saw h, I'm now going to see 7. Okay, but I'm going to keep my operations. There was a minus, and my numbers. There was a 2. All right, I'm going to erase these circles here because you guys often really struggle when you start getting to new things. Now, you can type this entire thing into your calculator. Remember, again, if you need some practice with those calculator skills, hit up Unit 0. But I'll give you a big hint. If you're going to type this into your calculator, you actually want to start with the N over D button. If you start with the N over D button, it's going to be way easier to type that 5 cubed on the top and that 7 minus 2 on the bottom. Okay, but I am going to simplify by hand. So let's see. 5 cubed means the same as 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5, 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. 125 up top. That was a grouping on the top of the fraction, so I started with my grouping. I also have a grouping on the bottom of the fraction. 7 minus 2 is 5. And now it looks scary, but it's just a division problem. 125 divided by 5. And again, use your calculator rather than panicking. But I know, let's see, that I get, 25. So you should be able to type the entire thing right from here and get 25 as well. Okay, give it a try. And if you're struggling, go back to our calculator lesson. All right, looking good. I want you to walk away with, it's not the fractions that matter. It's not the letters that matter. It's not the negatives that matter, okay? I need you to be good at algebra, which is actually fairly simple. And then your calculator can handle that ugly. All right, okay. Guys, make sure you're pretty good at this skill before you move on. It's one of those foundational skills. Happy learning.